Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Maggie. Maggie is one of those characters that has a lot of red health, which you can use early on to kind of make certain decisions that you wouldn't make with other characters. And one of those decisions is actually just going to the curse room, which might seem like ludicrous. Why wouldn't you do it with other characters? But a lot of characters though don't even have that much health that you can kind of gamble away with. A lot of characters have either 2 health, or maybe they don't have any health at all, or red health at all, which means you're wasting your spirit hearts or black hearts. And that is kind of a risky proposition, because whenever you do that, you're reducing your chances of getting a devil deal on the next floor, or if you're left with only 1 red health, you're increasing your chances of just dying against one particular enemy or maybe one super troll bomb on the first floor, which is not something you want to do. But with Maggie, what you can do is enter the curse room and then heal yourself. And even if you couldn't heal yourself, you still have 4 red health, which means you can kind of toss and gamble away that there's a good chance that you will be able to survive with only 3 red health until the next floor. And for that reason, I think it's important to realize the strengths and the weaknesses of a character, and I think it's important to kind of use it to the greatest advantage that we could. So even if it's just entering the curse room, which might not seem like a big deal, it's not a decision I would make with every character, you know. Even though it's an objectively good thing in this scenario, it's not something that you could do with any character, and I think it's important to realize that. And like I said, the curse room obviously can have a lot of goodies for us, like damage up items or tears up items, which will help us clear the floor. And not only that, I think the most important thing is that we don't have to retrace our steps when we beat the boss and go back and maybe finagle things with spirit cards in order not to kind of waste our time with going back and forth. And the ability that we can do it just immediately when we see the curse room is one of those that I think is gonna save us a lot of time, especially on a character that's as slow as Mac is. Just because, you know, whenever you're playing as a slow character, it's so much harder to dodge, which means you're gonna be eating a lot of more damage. And not only that, it's just gonna take just much longer to traverse the rooms. And it might not seem like a big deal if you're moving just a tiny bit slower, but when you have to consider that they have to visit literally 100 of rooms, those little seconds start to add up, and you end up in a situation where you're just a second too late for boss rush or something like that. And that sucks when it happens. So you kind of want to avoid that by realizing that Maggie is slow, and you kind of have to do things in a different order than maybe you're used to. So this floor had the marked item, which is one of those items that's really fun, and it's very good against certain bosses. Like I think against Mega Fatty, it's a decent item just because you can put your reticule on the boss, and you can just dodge and not have to worry about anything. So for all of those who are unaware of what this item does, is you don't shoot with your cursor keys anymore. So pressing right does not mean you'll shoot right, and pressing up does not mean you'll shoot up. But what you do is you get a reticule which you control, and basically with the cursor keys you move the reticule, and your character just automatically shoots in that direction. And you can imagine how that might make it just a little bit more annoying to fight a lot of bosses, especially when you enter boss rush, when the room is giant and your reticule takes literally a few seconds to go from one side to the other, and you have 2 bosses to kill. So things can get kind of hairy sometimes, but it's very good in certain situations. And like with many other items, it has its benefit, it has its downsides. It does increase your tear shot speed or tear rate, so you shoot faster, which is obviously a good thing, but at the same time you don't really have that much control over your tears anymore. Like I said, it's good against certain bosses and enemies, and it's not good against others, so there's really more of a preference thing going on here. I think objectively it's not a good item, just because we are so used to shooting normally without having to kind of aim with our reticule, if that makes sense. And the game is designed in a way that you kind of have to shoot in 4 directions and not just passively shooting with your reticule. And I think that shows whenever you are in a room that has a million spiders and you kind of have to get all of them. And the only reason I took it was obviously to just have a little bit of fun, because I think this game is supposed to be fun, and you can really have fun if you always skip these so-called bad items. But also because we already had that touch item, which gives us penetrative shots, and I thought that maybe just a little bit this is gonna make our life a little bit easier, and thankfully it did. It really shows whenever you can actually hit multiple or more than one enemy at once. And just because you shoot faster, there's just gonna be a higher mass of tears on the screen, and when you're moving around, you're gonna be kind of shooting in random directions a lot of the time, which will result in you killing certain enemies that maybe otherwise you wouldn't be able to kill. And for that reason, I think this makes for a fun synergy that is maybe underappreciated, but at the same time, I really understand why people don't like it. So thankfully this boss or this devil deal went well, and we got the dead cat, which puts us at 1 red health, so we had 3 red health, and because we only have 1 red health remaining, we can take the empty vessel, and if you don't know, the empty vessel gives you flight if you have no red health. And because we took that cat first, we were only at 1 red health, and then we traded that red health for the empty vessel, which means we were at no red health at all. So that might seem like a mistake maybe to some of you, which are like, okay, but you have the IV bag, which you can't use to the greatest advantage anymore, just because you obviously you can't use your red health and then regenerate it, and you can't really play the IV bag to get a lot of coins. But to that, I think I should kind of reinforce that IV bag is not useful only if you have red health, and if you only have spirit hearts, the fact that you're gonna, whenever you enter boss rush and you have the Polaroid, whenever you use the IV bag, you're gonna get that invisibility. And it doesn't really matter if you have any red health or if you have just spirit hearts, because yeah, obviously spirit hearts are hard to come along by, and we don't really have any way to kind of generate them with either Direct Bomb or the Miter. So for that reason, I can understand those concerns, but I still think that we're going to be using it enough times, especially with the Humbling Bundle, which kind of doubles our coin output, that we will be able to get to 99 cents. And more importantly, I think this item should be used defensively and not so much for the coin generating purposes. I mean, it has both uses, obviously, but I'm just saying that I mainly picked it up to have those defensive purposes. So whenever you see a shot coming at you, you're going to be using it to shield yourself, or maybe to trigger the Polaroid, and you get the shield and you're invisible for a few seconds, and then you can use that to your advantage by either killing the enemies or just avoiding damage, like I said. So of course I kind of disrupt all of that by picking up the breakfast item on the 2nd floor, and I was debating whether I should pick up a health up, even though I went on this trend right now that I don't really need red health. But I decided to do it anyway, because flight, while it's nice, we were actually entering the last floor of the run, which is... and there's relatively little chance that having flight will be that useful to us unless we find maybe a few ways to go forward. And if you do, there will always be more devil deals which we can trade a red health on, just because we have the goat head. So for that reason, I maybe decided that it's maybe more beneficial for us to have red health, at least on boss rush, because this is a normal, not a hard run, which means that the enemies will drop more red health than if you're just playing on hard mode. And you can indicate if the run is hard mode or not if the icon in the left, so just below the keys on the right side, you can see that there's like a foot, a heel, that indicates that this run goes to Mom's foot. But if it was outlined by red, this means that this would be a hard mode run. Or maybe if it had that Satan symbol or the pentagon symbol, I think that also indicates that the run is hard. If it was that one, then I don't think there's a need for us to pick up red health. But because we do have the Polaroid on this run, I think having 1 red health is very important, or I think very useful, just because we can use that IV bag to get to half a heart. We get the Polaroid invisibility, we kill the boss, and then the boss gives us red health, which we can pick up, and then we can pick up and then use the same technique again to hit ourselves and get that Polaroid invisibility. And basically we can do that as long as the bosses are dropping red health. And I think on average every boss dropped me at least half a heart of red health, and just because I had the IV bag and not the IV bag, the Humbling Bundle, a lot of enemies actually dropped us 2 full red hearts, which would be useful to have. But just having 1 red health was enough to kind of sustain that combo and and I was kind of invincible for the most part. So in that situation, it kind of turned out well for us. And I think it's important to realize that I only made this decision because I didn't feel like the run was going to go on for so long. And also because I had Goat Head and I could always go back to the Devil Deal to hopefully pick up a Devil item to kind of trade my last red health away in order to trigger my flight from the empty vessel item, and then maybe use that to get more consumables. But as it turned out, thankfully, it wasn't too much of a... it didn't turn out to be much of a burden or much of a mistake to do anything here, because, like I said, this was the last floor and there weren't really a lot of situations where I needed flight. And what I even decided to do is basically destroy every rock in hopes of actually finding a crawl space which would take me to the next floor, just because I didn't want this run to end. I think it was so fun with the effects we were having, so the mark, the death touch, and the bunt cake, which gives you, not the bunt cake, but the fruit cake, which gives you random shots every second. It turned out into a very, very enjoyable run for me, but sadly we did destroy all the rocks and there was nothing there for us. And we did manage to finish the run in the 130th, which is not a bad score, not a good score. It was somewhere in the middle for me, I think about average. And with not that high damage penalty, which I was very surprised considering I took 4 shots of damage on the first floor, which was kind of unprecedented, we did manage to score quite well. So thankfully, because of the AWAS run, we were able to explore one more floor, we got some points that we otherwise wouldn't get, and that put us in a seldomly good position. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.